We weren't really sure if we were on or not, but good afternoon. Kent Grisham from the Nebraska Trucking Association here, welcoming you to our fall conference series of brown bag webinars that we're having. Since we couldn't gather together in person for our fall conference this year, we are doing our best to make sure that we're bringing you the kind of content that our conferences are known for. Because this is a webinar and we're not all looking each other in the eye, we do want to put out a couple of reminders. I hope they're showing on your screen there. Our disclaimer related to this webinar is that it is for the members of the Nebraska Trucking Association only. The content here is that of the Nebraska Trucking Association and the presenter. The opinions expressed by the presenter may or may not express those of the Nebraska Trucking Association. They are private and open to our members only and invited guests. They are not open to the public or the news media, so anyone who's not a member of the NTA or who is a member of the news media must not remain connected to our webinar, and we ask you to disconnect at this time. I also want to point out our presenting sponsors, our diamond sponsors, our platinum and gold sponsors that you're seeing there on your screen. Volvo Trucks of Omaha, Prepass, and Joe Morton & Sons Great West Casualty, our presenting sponsors in particular, throughout the entire week of our activities. All of that is leading up, and Dave, if you can change slides to just remind everybody of some of the stuff we have coming up still. We do have our leaders panel tomorrow with Derek Leathers, Ton Ostergaard, and Linda Jasa to talk about the road to recovery from their perspective, what needs to happen, and what we all need to be doing to pull together to get us back to some sense of normal, because I refuse to call what's happening in 2020 the new normal. And of course, that all leads up to Friday, our family festival at Werner Park in Omaha, starting at 5:30. Our truck show, our annual awards, we'll have some great food, games, and it'll all be culminated in a celebration of our 80th anniversary with a special fireworks show. So we hope you'll join us for those things as well. There's still time to register on the website at nebtrucking.com. Also, as we get into this webinar today, we do have the opportunity for you to pose questions to our guest. If you have the chat feature open on your computers, you'll see over there where you can type in a chat message and send it to the organizers, and they will pass them along to Chris and I. Or you can email a question to Dave, that's D-A-V-E, at nebtrucking.com, and he'll make sure to pass them along. Now, without further ado, Dave, if you can change slides again. I can't tell you how happy I am to introduce our guest today. Chris Speer is President and CEO of the American Trucking Association. He leads a tremendous organization that is probably, of all the trade associations I've ever been exposed to, I think the ATA is the most in tune with its membership and the needs of its industry. It truly has the pulse of the industry and is representing us oh so well at Capitol Hill and throughout the country. And I also want to remind everybody that the American Trucking Associations has that plural S on the end for a reason. It is a federation of all 50 state trucking associations, and I can assure you that our voice from here in Nebraska is equally represented at the ATA, and all of the states are vital to the success of the ATA at the national level. So I hope by the end of this conference today, you'll be sure to consider your support for the ATA, re-up your membership, and if you're not a member yet, be sure to consider joining. Contact us here at the NTA and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. So with that as a lead up, Chris Speer, for those of you who've never had the chance to meet him, is actually a native son of Nebraska. So Chris, you have favored son status with us here. And I'm going to throw in just, I hope this is okay, a moment of introduction. Chris is, of course, like everybody at ATA, working from home. His home happens to be in Wyoming and has very recently been threatened by the wildfires. We weren't sure Chris was going to be able to join us. We're so thankful that you are. And Chris, I'm going to throw in a personal note as well. You have a son who is a firefighter who I'm thinking may or may not be on the front lines. And just want you to know that Nebraska is with you, praying for you and your family, and glad that so far everything is working out.
I appreciate that, Kent, and what a great introduction. Thank you, and for having me on. I know that my attendance with NTA is a bit overdue, and I would much rather be there live with you face to face. And doing this virtually is the next best step. So I will say at the outset that if I have any trouble with audio or video, just raise your hand, Kent, so I can see that I need to stop and pause. So sometimes that's happened and I just keep going and nobody's even hearing me. So
Okay.
we'll roll with it. Roll with it. But thank you. I really appreciate the warm introduction. You are right. We are under a pre-evacuation order here in Centennial, Wyoming. You know, it's heartbreaking to see acreage like this burn, but we've got 14,000 acres just about 5 miles from our doorstep that's on fire, and only about 2% contained. And I just commend our firefighters, our air crews. We've got 15 tankers, several helos. It feels like a military operation here, but we're probably looking at evacuating as early as tomorrow, and then it's in God's hands. So it is an opportunity to be here, though, and I really am glad that the schedule and with everything going on outside here, that I was able to do so. Congratulations to you all for your 80th. What a marvelous achievement. ATA is 87 years, so there's incredible pedigree for both associations. We date back, we've seen a lot, we've been through a lot, and I do think that as we look at 2020, it's no exception. It's a challenge, but one that I think trucking is well equipped to handle. And I believe what I'm about to walk you through is a good illustration of that. So it takes a tremendous industry, an incredible effort by everyone involved, particularly our drivers, to see to it that our economy stays as robust as possible, that we weather this storm, and that we return to a degree of normality that we all are accustomed to. So I am very, very pleased with the performance of the Trucking Association, ATA, and TA through this crisis and now recovery. And I think it's a testament to our commitment to our customers, the American people, and to each other to see it through. And I'd also commend Kent for his work last week on NTA, National Truck Driving Appreciation Week. It's a week, should be much longer, but it is an opportunity to really highlight those contributions that our drivers, our moms, dads, husbands, wives, real people behind the wheel play each and every day to ensure that we get from point A to B, that those store shelves are filled, that the medical supplies, the test kits reach the front lines to the first responders. And we don't telecommute. Our drivers particularly are in a position to put themselves at risk for the betterment of our society, and they've done so. And I think 2020 has been a shining moment for that. And so NTA has been a great opportunity to highlight that. My congrats and applaud to Crystal for her efforts as chair, Brent for taking that position going forward, and as well as Eric, I need to mention, as our ATA Vice President. So thank you all for your service and contributions to the association. I really am grateful for that. So I'm going to take about 20 minutes and reserve some time for Q&A, as I do really welcome the dialogue, the back and forth with each of you. 2020 is an interesting year, to say the least. It's now a verb. If you've been 2020'd, I've been 2020 probably more times than I can now count. I never used a year as a verb before, but this certainly I think is fitting considering everything that we've had to endure, both professionally and personally. But let me dial back a moment, because we began 2020 with a lot of optimism. We felt that economically speaking, it would feel much more like 2018, not 2019. And there were a couple leading reasons for that. As we went into the year, we had ratification of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the replacement to NAFTA, the 1994 agreement, the oldest trade agreement in all agreements that we have under the U.S. belt. And we also had a second breakthrough coming into the year, which was 50% of the negotiations with China had been reached and ratified. And so those two developments gave us great hope that our neighbors to the north and south, our trade partners in Asia, would be in a good position to equip the U.S. economy to be very strong and enable our industry, obviously, to service it. And so that optimism we felt coming into 2020 was good. And then March hit, COVID hit, and all things changed. And is an industry like ours, who's had a history of being agile, being able to pivot based on a crisis, 2020 and the COVID crisis was certainly no exception. We immediately formed a task force at ATA. We felt that that was needed both internally as we dealt with how to deal with closures due to work restrictions that are still in place actually in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And they're very strict. And so it's caused a lot of challenge to our organization to provide value to service our members, particularly in the initial weeks where I think our role was most instrumental. And it was because we saw a lot of stakeholders making decisions that impacted, in many instances, adversely the trucking industry. Governors, some, but mostly mayors who have never dealt with supply chain logistics, particularly trucking. Made decisions that I think were well intended for their constituents, but not very well thought through. Mayors from the state, cities of New York City to San Francisco, geofencing basically, and not allowing any commercial vehicles in or out. It begs the question: what were you thinking? How do you think that you're going to be able to get food restocked on the shelves, those test kits, medical supplies? Really not a lot of thought given to it. So we had to step in. We had to give them a moment of pause. And we worked with many of our state association executives like Kent to make certain that we amplified the issues surrounding why that was a bad idea and they needed to immediately correct it. At the same time, we went to the U.S. Federal Department of Homeland Security and received essential status. And that allowed us a stamp of approval operating in every state to override a lot of these state and local ordinances. And that was really a pivotal move on our part that maintained the continuity that we require going state to state. We then moved over to DOT. We got exemptions for hours of service. So we had flexibility there to operate under these conditions. And then we really needed to work with the governors, and working with our state association executives, we had several governors make decrees that shut down public rest areas that are uniquely positioned to allow us to run lanes from state to state. So if you're going from Nebraska to New York City or New York State, you're going to need Pennsylvania rest stops, obviously, to comply, to rest, to take breaks. Those were removed from the open status, and that really put a strain on our ability to logistically serve our customers. And we got those reopened in states, including Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Nebraska, Arizona. It felt a lot in the early weeks like sort of playing a game of whack-a-mole. And then DMVs obviously were shuttered in multiple states throughout the country. So issuance of CLP, CDLs, medical certificates, all of that had to be resolved, and we needed exceptions to every one of them in every state. So that is where your federation, ATA, with 50 state associations led by good leaders like Kent Grisham, step in and get loud, get vocal, get engaged, and get the outcomes that we need immediately to continue operating, continue doing the things that we need to do to serve our customers and the economy during a crisis. So those were the initial phases, and then we moved quickly into the relief phase. From crisis to recovery, we have to have our customers solve it. And many of them obviously were feeling a tremendous adverse impact from the shutdowns that were being issued by the governors, by their local mayors. And those ordinances were obviously impacting their ability to order freight. Where we did see tremendous growth, e-commerce, grocery, as well as in other sectors, we also saw some that were certainly seeing immediate impact. The lack of fuel consumption, obviously, for our tanker sector, definitely saw an impact adversely. If you're brick and mortar retail, certainly those serving those sectors of the economy were adverse impacted. So we saw ups, downs almost immediately. Our economic team, led by Bob Costello, is done a marvelous job, I think, of tracking that, not just week to week, but month and quarter, and projecting outward as to what we saw and see happening going forward. That information is really vital, I think, for an industry that's trying to navigate a crisis to recovery. And then I think getting money, the COVID relief funds, the PPP monies, not just into our industry, particularly the medium and small size companies that utilize that option, but we wanted our customers, more importantly, to have access to that. If we have customers, they're in business, then we're in business. It's that simple. So that money was very vital. We lobbied very aggressively for it, and over $3 trillion was put in place by Congress to ensure that those businesses remain vital through the crisis to recovery. Another outcrop that I'm very proud of, despite all the headwind that we've had to face, is the image. We just mentioned NTA last week and the importance of it, but we also saw and witnessed an opportunity to really highlight the contributions our drivers made during the crisis, when it really, really was vital to continue delivering the goods to our customers throughout the country. And the President, the Secretary of Transportation both recognize that. And in April, we put 4 drivers back on the White House South Lawn with their trucks in the backdrop, and not a political event, no hype, just sheer recognition for those valiant efforts by our drivers, representing 3.5 million of them across the country that took time away from their families, took time, to do their jobs at great risk to themselves, to get the job done. And I think that was one of the most incredible opportunities to really bring to the surface those contributions. Just in 48 hours, we had 410 million social media impressions. You just simply can't buy that kind of exposure anywhere. And so an opportunity like that to really pay tribute, give thanks, and highlight those contributions. In addition to NTA, we're trying to do it every week we can, and that was no exception either. So I really appreciate the President and Secretary for recognizing those efforts. And we saw a cascading effect from that attention being placed in communities throughout the country. We saw local police escorting our drivers to where they could get a shower and a hot meal. Churches, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, handing out hot meals, baking cookies, banners hung from overpasses to cornfields. I've had an opportunity to travel throughout the country during this crisis and through Nebraska several times on my way to Wyoming. And man, I got to tell you, it really feels good to see those signs, thank a trucker for what they're doing, hung up in those cornfields. And I tell you, it means an awful lot to those drivers when they see that. So I think we've seen unprecedented levels of attention being given to our industry, our drivers during the crisis. So there's a lot of bad that we can point to, but I also think the contributions our industry is making to the economy is also an opportunity. And I think our image is risen tremendously to peak levels that we've probably never witnessed. So very proud of that. And we'll continue doing it going forward. Got to ride that wave as long as we can. The economy, as I mentioned, is Bob Costell and his team are really now forecasting from the crisis to recovery what we're starting to see. And the 3 buckets of freight that Bob often talks about, we're seeing good numbers come from housing construction, great numbers from retail, and even in the 3rd bucket, manufacturing, we're starting to see improvement there. Not as strong as the other 2, but definitely showing promise. And when you see all 3 of those actually moving in the right direction at the same time, that's really good indicators for our industry going forward. We're seeing that reflected in our OEM members and the manufacturing, as we see Canada, Mexico, and those parts flow more freely. The final assembly, in many instances here in the U.S., those tractor trailers are now being put up for sale, and we're seeing good numbers come out of their sector as well. So very pleased to see that and our ability to continue to grow in this environment. Where we're not seeing it is on the service side. We're not seeing it, but that's not a sector of the economy that adversely impacts trucking directly. That's going to take time, I believe, to rebuild it. And we're probably not going to see that happen until Q3 of next year at the earliest. And I think that'll be largely driven by having a vaccine out there, being widely disseminated amongst the populace and inoculating our population. And hopefully by the end of 2021, we start to see a return to normality, that anxiety level come down, more people flying, more people vacationing in hotels, going to do the things that they long for. And that will certainly be a lead indicator, and certainly a return to normality, we hope. All this said, 2020 has been a challenging year, but it does not give us an excuse as an association not to do our job. We have an issue set that is outlined by our Strategic Priorities Committee. Several of NTA members are members of that committee that are really my lifeline to tell me what are the pain points of the industry and what do we need to be focusing on. The second half of that equation is that the Strategic Priorities Committee helps us rank in terms of chances of success. So it's taking into account the environment that we're working in Washington, very divided, fewer vehicles legislatively to amend, very politically charged, not a lot of compromise, yet we still have to navigate that. So the SPC, this committee, helps us really rank and set forth our resources that we allocate toward getting those things done. And we are very much an outcomes-driven organization, and putting wins on the board is absolutely essential for our ability to grow. So during the COVID relief packages, we continue to advocate for FET. This is the federal excise tax holiday through the end of 2021. This is good for everybody. If you're an environmentalist, you're going to want new equipment out on the road that's environmentally friendly. You're going to want safer equipment out on the road, as safety is your leading priority, which it is for us. But those are two immediate benefits from this. It also has a tremendous impact on jobs. And those that manufacture this equipment are going to see an uptick there as well. This is a 100-year-old tax. It's the last of that tranche from World War I that was not lifted and still applies. Nearly over $20,000 per power unit. Is simply unacceptable in an environment like this. So good for safety, good for environment, good for job growth, and certainly in an environment like COVID, when you're trying to get people back to work, this is good policy. So we're going to continue to push for FET holiday and liability reform. Exemptions for employers in this environment would be a tremendous lift to the economy, the ability to confidently hire people back to work and let them do their job safely. But also without the threat of the plaintiff's bar hanging over their shoulder, trying to litigate us for every single thing that we do. And this was a bit of an outcrop from what we launched in October, which is a very extensive, coordinated strategy that will last over the next decade by ATA to help our state associations coordinate those efforts state to state, share and disseminate the strategies, prioritize. In the last year, tremendous strides. We've had victories in Iowa, Missouri, Louisiana. And Louisiana, I have to stop and pause because our chairman, Randy Gilliott, got engaged. He got loud, he got vocal. I went down there, we met with Governor, Democrat, and attorney. Anybody's ever driven through Louisiana, you would know that it's billboard central and a trial lawyer's dream. And we went down there and got comprehensive reform passed a couple months ago, and it should show every state what's possible. And now we need to continue that trend and get to other states and turn the tide, make our industry less interesting to the plaintiff's bar, and get them out of our hair. This is a very aggressive strategy that also really brings to the surface this vile profession. It's a very parasitic profession that preys on our industry. And the bottom line is that they're lining their pockets. They're not giving that award money to their clients. They're awarding themselves. And they're taking food off the table for hardworking men and women across the country. They're putting good businesses that were started with one truck by families, hardworking people, including those in Nebraska, that shouldn't feel that they're under threat, under attack by a concerted strategy led by the National Plaintiffs' Bar. And so this strategy led by ATA is already having an impact, and we're going to stay to it. We're going to continue to kick these guys in the teeth, and as long as we have to, and we're already seeing the results, and I'm very, very optimistic that if we continue that trend, that we're going to have an impact that's very measurable and makes our industry more growth oriented. And so I really like that initiative. Infrastructure, we were very aggressive this year in positioning our industry for the next comprehensive bill. I don't think it's going to happen this year with the political environment, but we did a great job of planting our flag in the ground. Randy Gilead, as I mentioned, as the chairman, testified before the Senate as well as the House. The House did produce a bill not only out of committee, but they passed it on the House floor in July. Tremendous strides. We haven't seen that happen. And I'm very optimistic that next year, regardless of who wins the election, we will see an infrastructure grow. Safer, more efficient infrastructure is going to really be measurable for our industry going forward. We certainly saw hours of service with the final rule come out. We have the temporary lift through the end of the year, but we need that final rule for the flexibility for our industry. We saw FMCSA, through our efforts, produce a pilot for non-military 18 to 20-year-olds. And as many have heard me speak, I feel very strongly about this with 2 kids in the military. I think we truly need to tap this talent pool, but we need to do it safely and responsibly. 49 states, including Nebraska, allow an 18-year-old to drive a Class 8 with no training, no technology requirements whatsoever. Through this effort federally, we're allowing them to cross from Texarkana, Texas to Texarkana, Arkansas, and do it safely and responsibly with hundreds of hours of training, including in the cab supervision and with technology using cameras and stability controls. These are things that we believe will help and enable this talent pool to come into this industry earlier, be a part of it longer, and replace those that will soon be exiting. We have an aging workforce, higher than national average. We need to take care of them, healthcare, wellness programs. We need to go after the veterans, the exiting service members. We need to go after urban hiring, minorities, women. These are all important steps. 18 to 20 is part of that. And I believe this is good policy. Listen, if we can train people in this age bracket to go over and protect our freedom, and many of them are in that age bracket, I'm pretty confident we can teach them how to cross from Council Bluffs into Omaha in a Class 8 safely and responsibly. So I'm very pleased with that program. It's a good step. I'm coming to a close, and we'll turn to cues. Hair testing is clearly an issue for many carriers that are using it, and I'm really outspoken on this. I feel very strongly in an environment where we need these tools to combat a national opioid crisis. We need these tools to obviously combat the fact that nearly a dozen states and Canada have legalized recreational marijuana. Urinalysis is not getting the job done. We're not advocating a mandate. We're just saying, if you want an alternative using hair testing versus urinalysis, you have the right to do so. Well, that's what was passed 5 years ago this month in the current highway bill. And our regulatory agencies, both the Health and Human Services Department and the Transportation Department, have to jointly produce a rule. HHS has to go first. DOT is good, they're rock solid, but HHS has failed miserably. They produced a rule recently that really raises and questions the science of hair testing, which is absurd. It's long-standing. And they also require, if there's a test positive on hair testing, that you have to back it up with a urinalysis test. It doesn't say anything about a negative test, so why is it applicable only to a positive? That's how flawed this proposal is. And we're going to take it back to the Hill and get it corrected. It pains me that we have to spend more time and energy doing what's right, that there's a few at HHS, career professionals, I believe, that are, I think, beholden to the urinalysis labs. I believe the urinalysis labs do not want to compete. That's the bottom line. That's what's driving this headwind. And for 5 years, they've gummed up the works on this. We're gonna make certain that this gets fixed. So we're very determined to correct this wrong. And then lastly, I think on insurance, it's going to continue to be a topic somewhat tied to tort and liability reform, but also the inflated costs that people are paying for insurance ain't getting any better. And it hasn't been changed since '82. We're still at a $750,000 cap. We've got carriers that are carrying multi-million-dollar policies annually. And it's just the disparity is certainly a strain on operating costs, the ability to compete, and we need better policy here. And I got to say, the ATA, in my opinion, what I inherited was not a good policy, not a good position, partly because we had no policy. And we have to take a moment of pause and really think that through. as to how do we maintain unity within the industry. This is an issue that's not about what you want, it's about what you can get. And not only is it a split, a riff, if you will, between large and small, multiple state associations, I would count upwards of 18 within my association federation are beholden to the interests of small carriers. That's not good or bad here, it's just the fact. And if they split off, ATA is not in a position to advocate this. So I need to keep all 50 states under our federation umbrella. I need to keep our large, medium, and small members at the table. And we, most importantly, we as an industry need to drive this outcome. The House passed infrastructure bill that I mentioned a moment ago included, without any debate, any involvement of our industry, an amendment that would hike it from $750,000 to $2 million. And at the markup in the House T&I committee, the sponsor, a Democrat from Illinois, applauded the plaintiffs' bar.
Chris, I'm not sure if you can hear us, if the freeze is on our end or on yours.
Think I can.
There we go. We
There we
lost
go.
we lost you partway into where you were talking about holding all 50 of the associations together as we approach the liability insurance issue.
Yeah, I think this is essential, and not just the associations, our large, medium, and small carriers. And the language that was included in the House passed infrastructure bill is a good example. It included an amendment.
We lost you again. We'll give Chris a second here to see if his connection catches up. Sorry about the connection problems, folks. I know that we were actually very concerned that Chris wouldn't be able to join us at all today because, oh, now he's coming back.
There we go.
There we
How's
go.
that? All right. I'll cut it short, but I'll just say the House passed.
We keep losing him at that same place that he keeps hitting on, where he starts in about what the House passed on that issue. See if he comes back. Officially, he is showing as offline on our system now, so we'll see if he's able to pop back on. I'll go ahead and offer, for those of you who are staying with us here, one comment related to the issue that Chris was talking about, which is the liability minimums discussion that's happening on Capitol Hill, where the effort is underway by some legislators to take the minimum liability coverage from $750,000 to $2 million. And we will be talking about this more tomorrow when we have our leaders panel with Derek Leathers from Werner and Ton Ostergaard from Crete and Linda Jasa from Jasa Trucking, so that we get smaller companies' perspective on this as well. But here in the NTA, it's not an easy issue for us to come to any kind of a conclusion either, because we do have small, medium, and large. The vast majority of our members are in what would be classified as smaller to medium-sized companies. And certainly the impact of increasing the liability limits is significant for everybody involved. However, there is the perspective as well that when the regulators and the legislators are looking at these issues, if we don't fully engage, we could very well wake up one day and instead of they were talking about $2 million, now we're talking about $4 million, because some of the original legislation actually came out well over $4 million. And what an incredible jump that would take. Do we have Chris back on audio now?
I believe so.
Hey, there he is. I was just offering some comments while we were hoping to get you back there, Chris, that at the NTA, much like what you were talking about at the ATA, the liability insurance question is difficult for us because we have the vast majority of our members, of course, are in the smaller to medium sized company category, and we do have large carriers as well, of course. And we, among our membership, don't exactly have consensus as to what the best approach is on the liability minimums. We have some folks who believe that they need to be left where they are and allow the marketplace to determine what someone needs to carry. If you are working with a shipper that requires you to have 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, so be it, but it's not up to the government to mandate what that is. At the same time, as you'll hear from, I think, one of our panelists tomorrow on our leaders panel, he'll tell you that if we don't fully engage in this and we don't keep ourselves at the table, we could wake up one day and it's $4 or $5 million as opposed to the 2.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I appreciate you backfilling that while I relogged in. I'm on a different router now, so I should be okay. This is going to happen. There's going to be a change made. So let's just all strap in for that, okay? Large, medium, and small carriers, be prepared for it. It's going to happen. My point here is that we have to be the ones to determine what the impact is, not the trial lawyers. That language that went into the House bill, they applauded at the markup in committee, the American Association of Justice, the Trial Lawyers Association, for writing it. We were not consulted. We were not part of the discussion. Okay, that's got to change. If we're going to have policy that impacts us directly, then we need to be the ones to determine it. So I went to the Strategic Priorities Committee at ATA and I said, look, this is not acceptable. The policy apparatus that we have is not going to get the job done. We are combat ineffective on this issue. I cannot breed consensus and I cannot maintain unity for our industry and our association with the tools I've been given. So the position that we've taken and adopted is to advocate a negotiated rulemaking, the force and effect of law, and it would change the current amount if adopted, but it will be led by FMCSA. It will include all stakeholders that are impacted, our industry, not the trial lawyers. And we would be the ones to determine based on data, discussions, and negotiation what the number should be. If not the 750,000 that was set in 82, what is it? And what is an acceptable number that we could all live with? It may be the language that was in the House in the end, but that's going to be determined by us, not them. And so I feel very strongly that we have to deal with this issue. I feel very strongly that we need to be the ones to determine what that is, not the trial lawyers. So that's why we opposed the language in the House bill. We weren't consulted. We weren't part of it. It was a very divisive move on their part. I think it was very intentional, what they did to our industry. And we need to reverse that. That language is never going to get passed in the Senate anyway. Your own senior senator from Nebraska opposes it. But I do think that the negotiated rulemaking process is a much better path to building consensus, maintaining unity, and ensuring that our industry is the one in the end to determine what that number is going to be. So that's the position we're taking. I feel very comfortable to get us where we need to be. But make no mistake, a change is coming. It's coming. So just strap in for it. But we need to be the ones driving that outcome, not the trial lawyers. Lastly, I'd say, like you guys, we've gone from live meetings to virtual. Our upcoming MC&E next month is now virtual. We've never done this before. I'll be candid. We've had to totally redesign. We're not doing showroom floors. We're not doing concerts. We're not doing big sponsored luncheons with keynote speakers, panels. These are things that have been changed, and you have to build sales modules to get sponsorships around this new environment. Well, what are the thresholds for them sponsoring these things? This is a challenge for us, but I'm very convinced that our MC&E is going to be a success. Our mid-year in May was. This will be even better. And so I'm very excited about it, but I'm also very excited to get back to normality where we can be face-to-face. I like seeing each and every one of you. This is very much a high-touch business, and at some point we've got to get together. This can't continue online. So in the interim, we'll do the best we can. And lastly, with the elections, I get asked this question a lot, who do you think is going to win?
You're taking my question away from me, Chris. That was going to be the next thing I brought up.
Well, I'll answer it now. I have no idea. I think it all comes down to who shows up. And, if you ran with the polls last election, you were probably wrong. There was no pundit or poller that could really account for who showed up for Donald Trump because none of them had ever voted before. This is a new block of voters. The question now is, will they show up again? Will they show up again in bigger numbers? Who shows up for Biden? A lot of his voting bloc in 2016 didn't show up for Hillary Clinton. And, I kind of point out to that bloc is, if you're not happy with Donald Trump, it's your own darn fault for not showing up. But do they show up this time in greater numbers? So these are all questions. If they're relying on people like anarchists, looters, rioters to carry the water, I think they're going to come up short. But really, in the end, it really comes down to who's going to show. And I don't trust the polls. I think it's going to be a very close race. I would give the nod to Trump. I think people are very motivated out there. I think they don't like what they're seeing in their cities and communities across the country. I think they're very focused on safety and security. I don't like what I'm seeing. It's not happening in Wyoming, but not every state's Wyoming. I'll tell you what, we'll hold justice here if that were to happen in our state capitals and cities. We ain't going to allow that. And I think other cities where people are getting frustrated with the riots and the destruction and no denouncing of that activity, I think it's going to motivate people to the polls. I really do. We will, as an association, be ready, Kent, to work with whoever's in charge. In the end, it's not our decision, but we have to continue to deliver value and outcomes for our membership. So if it is a Biden administration, if the Senate were to flip, we've got to be in a position to work with whoever's in charge. So I do maintain a degree of integrity with the association out of respect that we will work with anybody that works with us. And I don't care if you're an R or D in the end. If that's the case, we will sit down and work with you. So I think that is a good standard that we'll continue to maintain well into 2021 and beyond. So with that, Ken, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I think your point is well taken in terms of how the ATA and really the state associations are bipartisan or even perhaps nonpartisan. And the FET issue, I think, is one that illustrates that a little bit because what we're hearing at the state level is a louder cry from the Democrats in support of a suspension of FET than even what we're hearing from the Republicans. And we have one member who has been in contact. He is with a Nebraska company, but he lives across the border in Iowa. And he wrote to his Republican senator and got an interesting letter back that senator was far more concerned about infrastructure revenue coming in through the FET than he was in trying to rebuild the economy by cutting the FET even on a temporary basis. So it was interesting. It wasn't a letter that I was expecting to read.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the likes of AOC, you're big on environmental policy. This is a no-brainer. Yeah. If someone that listens to the business community, whether it be ATA, the Chamber of Commerce, NAM, Equipment Manufacturers Association, this is good policy. It's good for jobs. It's good for the economy. Bottom line, it's good for everybody. And to me, it's a no-brainer, but it does cost money. And anything that costs money is obviously going to get held up. My argument there is, we're talking about $3 to $4 billion over the course of a year's suspension. Okay. You guys just voted, Congress. You guys just voted for $3 trillion on the credit card, by the way, on the credit card. So you're so afraid to raise new revenue like at the pump, but you're no problem putting $3 trillion on a credit card that our kids, our grandkids are going to have to pay for. This is a very smart temporary policy that will be good for jobs, safety, and environment. And I think our message is resonating with a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. So we'll stay at it.
Well, and I do think, not an endorsement on my part or the NTA's part, but I think it'd be hard to argue that the current White House has been very open, very friendly, and very supportive of trucking and trucking related issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have, Kent. And, kind of walk that fine line about we'll work with people that work with us. There's no question this White House has been very receptive to our industry, and they've repeatedly acknowledged it, not just ATA and the industry, but the drivers most importantly. And we're grateful for that. We've seen good policy on taxes come out of the White House. We work diligently on that. But this is a White House that campaigned heavily on infrastructure, and they didn't produce a bill. The House Republicans didn't produce a bill, but Nancy Pelosi did. Nancy Pelosi got USMCA done. So, those are two tier one issues that we're advocating. Do I just ignore the fact that the House majority currently got those things done? No, they're working with us. We're going to work with them. We probably differ on more things, obviously, with the Democrats than the Republicans, just because we're business. And we're going to find a lot of those issues. But on the big stuff like infrastructure, trade, when we're seeing them do those things and getting it done, I can't ignore that. We have to work with those people. So I think there's ebbs and flows on both sides. And, by the way, I mentioned hair testing earlier. Very, in terms of visibility and scope, not a big ticket issue like infrastructure tax. It's big to us, but it's the administration that screwed it up. So I'm quick to point that out. Yeah, we've been working with them on a lion's share of stuff, but that's not a guarantee that everything that we want done is going to get done. So hair testing is a good example of that. In my opinion, it should have gotten done by this administration and wasn't. All right, so be it. We got to find a way to get it fixed. So, that's what we're in a position to do, and we'll continue doing it regardless of who wins in November.
All right. Chris Speer, man, oh man, are we glad to have you in Nebraska, even if it's virtual.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I really, my sincerest thanks to you, your leadership, all the members. I know many of you very well. Many of you personally, and being a native son, I love it when I'm back in my state. My dad's still there, and I got a lot of family, a lot of friends, and a lot of history, having been born and raised. And I'll always be a Cornhusker at heart. Very glad to see you're going to be playing. I wish my Wyoming Cowboys would do the same. So you know who I'm going to be rooting for. So thanks for having me on.
And I know for a fact you've got some Husker gear in your closet, so we'll expect at least a screenshot or something of that big red N on your chest.
Yeah, I just got to say, I was on Iowa's annual last week, and they asked me who's going to win the Super Bowl, and I think everybody about swallowed their pretzel when I said Buffalo Bills. I've given up on the Redskins. I don't even know what they're called anymore. Diehard Redskins fan no more. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. Our boy Josh Allen from Wyoming, 2-0 now. He's killing it. So there's my dark horse. There's my Cinderella story for you.
All right, Dave. I'm going to ask you to put up the reminder about the Family Festival and the rest of the fall conference as we start to say goodbye here. Folks, don't forget there is still time to register for the remainder of our events. Go to nebtrucking.com. We really hope to see a good crowd out there at Werner Park. Our good friends at Werner Enterprises is helping sponsor that so that we'll have the carousel running and all sorts of fun activities for the entire family. Our annual awards program, and of course our 80th anniversary celebration fireworks. So with that, Chris Speer, God bless you, sir. You and your family and your homestead will be in our thoughts and prayers, and we'll be watching. And we know that you have Nebraska's interests and the entire trucking industry at heart.
Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow with our leaders panel at noon with Derek Leathers, Ton Ostergaard, and Linda Jasa. Until then, Kent Grisham from the Nebraska Trucking Association. We'll see you tomorrow.